Agility is all about the future for where businesses need to be. Otherwise, as we say, if you're not agile, you're fragile.
What does an agile team look like? I'd like to shake up the org chart. Shake it up, shake it up. Woo, woo, woo.
You know I love it when you sing.
Well, hello, Natalie.
Hello, how are you this fine day?
Very, very good, because we're talking about one of my favorite topics today. Agility.
I'm excited. Yeah, well, you know, it's my favorite topic too, because definitely agility is all about the future for where businesses need to be. Otherwise, as we say, if you're not agile, you're fragile.
Yes, that is definitely our trademark term. And I think today I really want to dive into what agility looks like, because not only does agility give us the confidence to be able to grow and be more aggressive in our growth strategies, as well as tapping into opportunities, but more importantly, what does the team look like? What does an agile team look like? So if you're up for that conversation today, I'd like to shake up the org chart. Shake it up, shake it up. Woo, woo, woo.
You know I love it when you sing. So you had me at singing. So of course I'd love to discuss an agile workforce with you and what that looks like and how we can shake up the org chart. Well, you know my little pet thing at the moment, so let's do it.
AI agents, which we are going to cover off, because it's not just about the same strategy that got us to where we were now. It is a completely different org structure. And if I can get on my soapbox for just 1 minute, what happened in COVID was we all went remote, right? And that really didn't serve the employer, but more so the employee. And I feel that since that has happened and we've gone remote, we now need to talk about what it means to have a global workforce. And then we can start leveraging the fact that a lot of them are working from home or odd hours and not coming into the office. So when we talk about a global workforce, what do you feel is the most important thing there? Because when people think about nearshoring, offshoring, they're thinking about low-level talent. And you and I both know and figured out a long time ago that the level of talent is different depending on the country, depending on the headhunting or recruitment process. So share with everybody our little secret that we figured out and tapped into for our own businesses.
That would be the one about not being talent, but territory. Not being territory, but talent. Let me get it right this morning. Warm up my brain. Yes. So we see a lot of businesses struggle with this. They're only pulling from their local pool. And when you're only pulling from the local pool, you aren't getting the best of what's available. And certainly with technology over the last 20 years, in particular, and the internet, and it happened with COVID, as you mentioned, the ability to pull people from other places in the country or globally has now become a cinch. It's not something that you think, oh my goodness, I can't do this. This is something that's absolutely normal. And in fact, you should be looking at it, because as much as we all like to say that we're Australian or American made or the country of where we're at, we're actually living in a global economy. And that means that there's global economic pressures on our businesses. And you can bet this, if you're not taking advantage of it, one of your competitors will be. And you really need to be looking at how you source the best labor the most cost effectively. And to your point about offshore or nearshore, well, that may be, if you're in America, could be Mexico for a nearshore option. But if you're looking for offshore, well, that could be the Philippines. It could be India. It could be Eastern Europe. There's lots and lots of places where there is hubs of amazing talent that you can tap into.
Now, we've tried them all, right?
Once or twice.
And India stands for I'll never do it again. And what I really like about the Philippines and why we landed on the Philippines is a couple of reasons. And the main one is that their education system is identical to the American system, which really helps with bridging that gap initially. Then we took it a step further and we went, okay, where are there American companies that have their head offices or back offices in another country? So your PwC, your Deloitte's, your Samsung, your Apples, all of the airlines, they all have back offices, large back offices in the Philippines. What that means is the talent is what we call Americanized, right? So they've grown up on the American schooling system. They've gone to American colleges, like style colleges in the Philippines. Now they've spent 5-10 years in a corporate America environment through a publicly listed or a large private company that has a back office there. So for us, that's the most aligned. That's the best talent we can find. It's not the cheapest, but it is the best talent that we can find that can easily immerse and integrate into a global team. And for me, that success of integration is really important because up until now, everybody's going, it's them and us. We cannot have that conversation anymore. They need to be working on your time zones, to your public holidays, understand your culture and immersed in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget American TV because they all grew up on that as
And
well.
social.
And yeah, and so
They
straight
love
away
their social in the
that's a
Philippines.
question that, I've been asked many times. Do they understand the nuances? Well, they grew up on American TV. So if that's a representation of American culture, then yes, they've got a pretty good idea of what those little nuances are. I mean, there's going to always be little differences that you get. Doesn't matter whether you're an Aussie or whether you're a Brit. There's always going to be little nuances, but fundamentally, we all speak the same language. And many of our team, for example, you would not even be able to tell that they're not living in America right now because their accents are so clean, or should I say lack of accent. It's kind of a universal accent that I'm seeing. Particularly seeing that in younger people. And I think that comes down to their exposure to gaming and all sorts of things. You kind of just have this universal accent that I think that is happening as well. So definitely the Philippines is a very attractive place to source high quality staff from. They're very familiar with the concept too. They've had this sort of approach to working for well over 20 years now. And so as a population, they're very familiar with working offshore for them into the American and Western world.
Yeah, I think the key here is having them on the same time zone. And we struggled with this when we first started offshoring a very long time ago. We figured out that they needed to be on the same time zone. So, what we do with our talent that we deploy into businesses that we are growth advisors for, we make sure that they're on the same time zone as our clients. That's the first thing. And secondly, we let them work from home. And that's really the trade off. They've done their 10 years of corporate grey. They're looking for work life balance like anybody else. They've done their 10 years in corporate grey and they're looking to work for an American company that's private and have a little bit more buy in rather than being a cog in the wheel. So they're sick of the corporate grey. They're sick of the 3 to 5 hours of commuting every day. So we let them work from home. But the condition is that they work the American hours and they quite like the night shift, which is great. Now, that's one way we can shake up the org chart. This is a multi-pronged strategy. Would you not agree? It's not just about offshore, onshore, or global teams, which we're now going to start calling it. We're going to refer to it as global teams. So there's a lot of other components as well, which is around being a lot smarter in the future with your growth strategies. There's huge opportunity coming, and those that are positioned well will be able to handle the margins. Obviously, things are going up. And with talent, that's one of the things that the lack of talent is shrinking. In fact, ITR Economics recently did an update and they said that wages are still going to rise another 28% in the next 3 years. That is absurd considering what we're already paying onshore. Then there's currently, I think, 2 job posts, 1 job for every 2 job posts, which is going to go to 3. So this problem's not going away, right? So it's not whether you want to do offshoring or not and create a global workforce, you need to. But it's not going to be cheap. We're not talking about $5 an hour. You need to increase
Those days
your
are gone.
expectations.
Yeah. And the old story is that you get what you pay for. If you want to pay $5 an hour, then you may be lucky and fluke the one person that is an absolute superstar, but that's just not there anymore.
Until they figure out they're a superstar and go and leave them.
Exactly. But also that is fundamentally the Philippines have been grooming their people for these sorts of roles for the last 20 years. So they've got a far greater understanding of their value and their worth in the marketplace. And so as a result of that, we have seen their wages increase. But they're still substantially lower than what you're going to pay for the same level of talent onshore. And in a lot of cases, we can provide additional levels of talent for a reduced cost to what you're paying now. So the numbers really stack up when you're trying to do that. But to the other point, and what I think you were hinting at is one of my favorite topics, you're talking about AI agents and the deployment of AI into things. So yes, we are already starting to see a shakeup of organizational charts. First of all, what we're seeing right now every day, and we have been seeing this in the marketing space certainly for probably the last 5 years in particular, but I can think back maybe closer to 10 where I first started to see pretty smart technology that you'd say was AI starting to come to bear. But now it's just been this avalanche of opportunity that's come forward with this AI. So we're seeing a lot of it in the growth areas. And you know that I've been on my soapbox with our team for the last 12 months or more. Your job is to become 10 times more productive with AI because that makes you highly valuable and also 10 times more productive. What employer would not want somebody that could produce that? So that's been my internal catch cry. And we've been doing a lot of internal AI training, encouraging people to use AI wherever possible. And we're seeing that through everything that we do. But the next exciting frontier is AI agents. That's essentially autonomous agents that you may be able to look at an org chart and say, that position, that position, that position, and now AI agents. And essentially the person above them, they're just setting off those agents and off they run, just like a normal employee would, but they're getting the work done in a fraction of the time without the errors. They don't get sick. They don't take holidays and off they go. So what we're seeing and what we're going to see into the next 3 to 5 years is this whole move from people to AI agents. Now, that in itself brings a lot of challenges and it's going to mean massive amounts of retraining of people. And to your point about increasing wages costs, that's again because in a lot of cases it's being fed by two things. It's being fed by supply chain pressures and it's also being fed by the absolute demand for AI. And the only thing that's really preventing AI from completely steamrolling everybody at the moment is the speed in which they can build data centers, produce hardware, and ship technology. And also power, because data centers and AI are hungry beasts for that very, very precious resource of electricity. So we're going to see more and more of this. And you and I have discussed this many times where we're going to end up with a senior type person, somebody that's been there, done that, has the stripes, has the battle scars, all of that, and obviously the experience, expertise, and they're the ones that are really going to be orchestrating the different levels of the orchestra. So they're the conductor of the orchestra, you might say, and they're going to have a bunch of AI agents that they're going to be interacting with and shooting off things just like they would do to a normal team. And that may sound a little far-fetched, but it's a reality. We are actually doing that today. We're starting to change people on the org chart.
Well, and it's not just a matter of swapping them out too. It's still very similar to the traditional model. You have your supervisor and then you have your people underneath, right? Who work into that supervisor or manager. In the same way, what we're really doing is swapping out those level ones and some of the level twos for agents. And then what we're doing with the level threes and the level four people is we're putting in offshorers who are brilliant into their teams to 10x their activity. So this is all about leverage at every single stage or every single level of the org chart, with the first level being wiped out completely. God help our kids in college, they better go get some context and work experience because context is the most important thing. So we've got on one side, we've got the cost of, rising inflation, we've got supply chain pressures, we've got issues with logistics, we've got all this stuff as founders that we have to deal with. And then on the other side, we've got to still make profit. This is really the leverage tool here. This is how we create teams that are agile, that can expand and contract to market conditions, which is what we need to sleep at night now. It's not like we have these 5-7 year cycles anymore. It feels like 5 or 7 days currently. But we sleep at night, Natalie, knowing that if anything was to happen, another COVID, whatever it is, we can reduce that workforce down, that core workforce of humans, down to our A-team onshore players, and we've still got our agents running. Whereas most businesses would take 12 to 18 months just to be able to pivot, or they sit on all these decisions, or they sit on their hands, even worse, while somebody else who's more agile, has an agile workforce, who's got really good margins so they can afford to do better marketing, and that's the person who wins.
Mm-hmm.
Those ones are going to eat their lunch.
Absolutely. And it's a twofold thing. I don't think it's just the people that are going to struggle to pivot. And it's the reasons that they struggle struggle to pivot. They're nervous about such a big change, and that's understandable. They have a whole bunch of legal reasons why they can't and compliance reasons, particularly when they're employing staff. And I get the fact that it's there to protect employees, and I respect that. The issue is that that's the way it's always been, but the new world is a very different place. And if you want to actually keep the doors open of your business, sometimes you're going to have to make really hard decisions. And I actually see, and I've spoken to you about this as well, a lot of up and coming businesses that have had the benefit of building their company on flexible staffing arrangements or flexible teaming arrangements and AI. They're going to be very, very competitive simply because they have a low cost base and they're very nimble and they're able to move through these times that are going to have some challenges for us very, very effectively because they can navigate and snake their way through. Whereas what we're seeing with these larger companies is that it takes a long time to turn an aircraft carrier in the Panama Canal. It just doesn't do it. You can't stop an aircraft carrier. It takes time. It takes time to turn them around. And that's what businesses need to be really aware of, is that how do they build that agility piece in and be thinking like this now? Because we know ITR economics have been pushing it for a long time that we're going to hit, and it's become quite, you see it in the news frequently. We're going to be hitting some pretty bumpy financial times in a few years. And if we're not already seeing the start of it now. So people need to be very, very considered in what they do with how they put their team and their ability to actually deliver what it is that they do as a business. And thinking about how they make their business more agility with people, technology, AI is fundamentally front and center, and getting that right will provide them a level of security moving forward. And to your point, a lot more nights where you sleep rather than wondering, how am I going to make payroll, or how am I going to keep up with the cost pressures that we're seeing elsewhere?
ITR also talks about the tremendous amount of growth that's coming over the next few years, and there will be winners and losers in that based on their agility. I believe it's going to be directly correlated. They need the A-team players, and they need to have their margins in place and the flexibility, and like you said, de-risk that strategy so that they, as leaders, we can jump on these opportunities. So, over the next couple of years, a lot of people will not seek out those opportunities because of those risks that you just mentioned. And so talk to me a little bit from a growth advisory point of view, because, that's what we do. We go into companies that are, over 20 million revenue. Most of them are over 50. And so they're more established. They've got these concrete teams. They're hiring and running their businesses the traditional way. Talk me through sort of the conversation at a CEO and founder level that we're having with them around setting them up for success and making sure that they're agile for two reasons: de-risking, taking advantage of the opportunity, and EV value. So where do we start with that conversation if they already have these established 50 mil plus revenue businesses with usually on average well over 50 employees onshore?
Well, I always start with the three areas, our red, blue, black. Red is about optimizing the operations and anything that does not add to revenue generation. And there's always heaps and heaps of areas inside our organization where you can make some intelligent changes or move towards more flexible things, such as AI, automation, and offshore talent. They're the three obvious ones to really help out. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. And then obviously we're going to be looking at, rather than growth, because a lot of people are focusing on growth because growth is still achievable in the landscape that we have. And it's also an opportunity for those that can actually get their act together. There is an opportunity to take market share from those that are going to be slower, because you can be in a much more cost-effective way. You can be tighter, more
You've got money
competitive.
for marketing.
Exactly.
You've got
You've got
money
money,
to
all
drive
of that.
growth. That's really
So
important. So
we're still seeing a lot of people are wanting to grow, but I would like to put it down to something else that we hold really key, and that's predictable revenue generation. So just knowing that you've got a predictable pipeline, there's a lot of comfort in that for founders and CEOs. So focusing on getting that first and then moving to growth is really important. And then the black piece, which is the strategy. How are we going to move through here? What opportunities are going to present up and down the supply chain? Are there new markets we can penetrate into? Are there new products that we can offer? Can we retool something to make it fundamentally delivered at a better cost base to make us more competitive? So Then going back to our red, there's massive opportunities right now to start looking at what AI and automation can do for us. If you haven't already as
Inside
a
the team
business,
structure. I mean, this,
exactly,
we're talking about teams today, and the red teams, to me, are pretty much done and dusted. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it should be replaced with as much offshoring and AI as possible, because these are back
absolutely.
office things that don't contribute to driving the revenues. So I know that sounds very aggressive, but at the end of the day, wouldn't you say that red is the place we need to start? This is where a lot of the
Absolutely.
shakeup needs to happen?
It's a lot of shake up, a lot of tidy up. So what I typically see is start going in and having a look under the hood. And what I see is a mishmash of systems. Nobody's really thought about how these systems should integrate, operate. Nobody's thought about the data or really got a solid handle on the processes for how that operate, how all of this comes together. And there's some of the key things, really looking at the processes, the SOPs, looking at the data and looking at the technology that's underpinning. Technology is very, very cost effective today versus what it was even 5 years ago. And if a
And
business
also,
is
Michelle, I hear you say it
absolutely,
all the time. Do not get into custom coding.
do
Most of the
not
stuff
cut
is not.
code.
We
Oh,
don't
look,
have 3 years to build an app, people.
well, you know where I came from. You know the sort of projects that I used to do, $100 million IT software
Yep.
projects. And I say to people, sure, I can cut code. I can get code cut. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. And to me, most of this stuff should be being cut by AI now. And certainly some of the solutions that I've been playing around with, I couldn't put together a team of 100 on the ground and be able to achieve what I'm seeing in the speed that I'm seeing it. So don't immediately think you've got to go to a custom solution. There will be something out there that will more than suit your needs for a fraction of the price. And it's not just it's the time and it's the risk that's associated with doing development. We
And the
really want to
investment.
exactly. We want to be that's not what we do. Somebody said to me the other day about building a custom-made scorecarding system and I said, "Why would we do that?" Because we have all of these amazing tools that are available and these companies have spent mega dollars on building incredible platform. What makes us think that we could do something better internally in a piece of that? It doesn't make sense to me. So let's stick to our knitting, and that's really what I think businesses should do. Stick to what you're good at, but get in the technologies that are really going to turn the dial on where you need to be. Get some productivity running there. And there's always this thinking, oh, it's going to be so hard. Honestly, those times have really changed as well. And the big factor, and this is where I think technology is going to go, the big factor that has held businesses to technology in the past has been migration. Nobody wants to go through the migration. To migrate this data to this is challenging. There's a lot of work, there's
Gone are those
disruption.
days.
Yep,
Hello, AI.
exactly. AI is going to just map that across for you. And
Mm.
the other thing that we've got to consider is that our workforce now are absolute technology natives. That whole training aspect that went there has fundamentally disappeared. There is certainly, sure, there's still training and familiarization to a level, but not like it used to be. The thing, though, that doesn't change is understanding the business process and how that's going to play and just figuring out where and what data you need. It's one thing to have it in a system, but it's another thing to actually be capturing that data and then using that data in your growth and using that data to drive fundamental business decisions.
So we're still in the red, right? We're looking at inside the red, all the things that don't drive the revenue, but that you need to run the business: accounts, finance, HR, tech, IT, all
Legal,
those departments,
compliance.
legal, compliance, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff that doesn't get me very excited, but that we need. So I delegate those ones. So those really, in the org chart shakeup that we're talking about today, those ones need to be AI'd, offshore, and automated.
Yep.
And big warning, before you can do the AI piece, we need proper SOPs and process flows for every single role. So what we've been doing is coming in with an offshorer a global talent, who comes in, who's high level and experienced, to map those out where they're absent in order for us to turn it into an agent, because garbage in, garbage out, right? So everything
Absolutely.
inside that red needs to look completely different. So right there, be honest with yourself if you're a founder or a CEO listening. At the end of the day, if your red is full of people and very little tech and certainly no agents, then know that you're sitting on a lot of money that you could be reinvesting in the blue and building out blue teams internally. And that's probably the thing that gets me the most is when I say to founders and I'm always at conferences speaking and YPO Vistage, I'm speaking to them all the time. And what I find is they say, I'd love to focus on growth, but I don't have the capital and I'm dependent on third-party agencies, or I've got one person, one poor little CMO that they're blaming for everything. So talk to me about now the org chart shakeup looks like inside the blue, which is marketing and sales.
Yeah, this is the area that particularly AI has really revolutionized fastest. And in fact, I was just on a call with a client literally an hour ago talking about exactly this. And one of the comments that we were making, or the discussion points, is that the team that we have right now is going to look very different in 6 months or even 12 months. You know what I'm working on in the background as far as AI agents. I've got 6 on the run at the moment. And that's another thing, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, because I think there's a bit of confusion around agents versus technology, and people are using them all interchangeably, and that in itself is creating a level of confusion in certainly different circles that we see in businesses. But yeah, fundamentally, you have to be prepared that over the next 12, 24, 36 months, your marketing team is going to look very different. There's a lot of software, I mentioned that earlier, that has been tested, trialed in the marketing space for many years that has got a lot of AI smarts about it. And every day I'm just seeing more and more, whether it be video editing, whether it be social, whether it be copywriting, content.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, all of that's great, but you still need people that really, really understand the audience that you are actually going out to. Unless you get your messaging right, and unless you get your offer and your value proposition right, you are still going to fall short. So that's where you really want to be using the strategy and the talent to be able to ensure that you're hitting the mark with that sort of stuff. You can produce a lot of assets, content, and collateral very, very quickly now with AI for marketing. But at the end of the day, it will all be noise unless you make sure that you fundamentally understand exactly what market you're in, exactly what product that you are positioning, the audience that you are positioning to your avatar, and then understanding that customer value journey. Because if you don't understand the value of that and how you are going to move a stranger and turn them into a super fan, how you are going to move them down that customer value journey, always adding value to increase the trust, so that at the right point you can ask for that sale, then you are going to be no better off than where you are without all of this stuff. All you're going to have is a lot of shiny toys.
Right. So when we go in and we say, let's look at the blue and what the team is to put that in place, right? We come in not just with people, but also with processes,
Tools.
which is our
Tools.
EGS, Enterprise Growth Systems. So we have
Mhm.
processes for how we do that, which is what you were just describing. And then what we really need to do is create an in-house marketing team, which is around the same cost as what they're paying for agencies anyway. So why not have a dedicated team? Getting back to what you were saying before, the predictable revenue model, you can only build one of those if you have an in-house dedicated marketing, lead gen, sales team, and I would also say customer service. So when we build those teams in-house and we're looking at those teams, we're really focusing on how to position the internal marketing manager with a team so that they can 10x the activity following best practices in marketing and lead gen. Now, we've seen a lot too where we've had CMOs internally leave, and you've even suggested not to replace the internal full-timer, which is a little shocking for some. So talk us through how you feel confident that with a fractional, because they're much higher level fractional CMOs, talk us through this fractional CMO with a offshore, because I think that's really fascinating because you've tried both models. You've tried the internal CMO, which if they're good, works really well. But if they're hopeless, and we're starting again with the team, or worst case, we don't have an internal person, there is another option that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, for sure. And so fundamentally, when we see a CMO internally, some are fabulous. Don't get me wrong. I've had the pleasure of working with some awesome people. I've also had the challenge of working with some that are just not up to the standard that needs to be. And this comes about because it's hard to find great people, but it's also hard to find people at a cost base that a business can afford. So they may call them a CMO, but really
They're
they're not much more
glorified
than a
graphic
marketing
designers usually.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so they don't have the depth of that. The other point and problem I see with marketing teams is that there really is no language. There's no real processes because we've got a really interesting mix in marketing teams. It's fundamentally creative people and analytical people, and as you know, they don't tend to gel so well. So that's what we've done with our EGS processes is actually create a framework where all of these people can coexist and actually produce something out the door. So, to the next point, though, of what we're seeing now is that because we always start with strategy, and that is a piece that is often missed, people just get straight down into the tactical without focusing on the strategy, the big picture. Where are we going? What are we doing? Who are we selling this to? All of those questions that need to be answered. Where's our competitors? What's the size of the market? What's the addressable market? All of those key things.
Which you don't
Then
delegate to your new hire, by the way.
Well, unless they're an absolute superstar and they've got a track record as long as your arm and they've been there, done that, and everything else. No, the answer is no.
There is a
We're
difference between a strategist and a CMO, just to be clear.
very clear. That's why the strategy that we do is so important. And yes, we see a lot of clients now that have been so disheartened by marketing because they really don't understand it. Is it marketing or is it branding? And we get into this debate a lot because they just think it's a bit of branding. When in actual fact,
I
with
don't care what
marketing,
it is, Nat, as long as there's outcomes and results,
well,
which
that's
is what a lot
exactly
of
it.
them
And
are. Yeah.
if marketing's being done right, it should be producing leads for our sales teams or taking them through from an e-commerce perspective till they get a sale. So it's actually understanding the role of marketing. But then the next piece is that, again, going back to the point about global talent, we have some of the finest fractional CMOs going around. And when I say fractional, what I mean by that is they're full-time resources to us, but they work a day or two a week inside our client businesses simply because they have such a great level of talent. You know, we've got staff that have come from Alibaba that have worked for some of the biggest brand names globally as their head of growth, as
And they're in the Philippines, just being
they're
very
in the
clear.
yeah,
They're in the Philippines.
they're there if you know where to find them, and
Well,
we're
we
very
have to
good at
headhunt them, definitely. We're
we're
very
good at
good at
hunting them out. A little tap on the shoulder. But,
yeah.
yeah, so we're finding that particularly a lot of businesses are just saying, "I'm just gonna opt for that because I don't really need an onshore CMO."
Well, there's
Some
your whole
say, "Hey,
budget gone. That's the problem. If you want a good one, you're gonna pay over 150,
300."
probably more, over 200 for a really good
Yeah,
one. The smarter,
and
again, this is all about org charts that are smart. A smarter option is a fractional who is a gun and an offshore team underneath them, and
mhm.
they're executing on a strategy that is done by a strategist. They can be part of the conversation, but they're not strategists. So set the strategy right first. Look at perhaps a fractional CMO so you can get access to that talent, but leave some money left over for a budget to be able to create an engine room, a team of people that work in-house that are dedicated content creators, video, so important, more important than ever. All of these bits that you need, the constant communication, you can get to all of that. I met with someone this morning and he's like, "Oh, we only do a quarterly newsletter because we haven't got the bandwidth."
Yeah, and obviously with tech and proper resourcing, you can need a newsletter every day because it's doable. It really is doable. That's the world that we live in now. So being able to produce the content is not really the challenge. It's being able to produce the right content based on the strategy, but certainly there are so many flexible options now in how you go about achieving the marketing team of your dreams, you might say, simply because a lot of people go, "Oh, I just can't afford it." When in actual fact, the reality is you probably can. If you look at it in a different light, through a different lens, and you look at, like we say, our global offshoring, or a global resourcing, looking at AI and automation, it's amazing what you can achieve on some pretty shoestring budgets. And, people often say to us, how do you do it so cost effectively? And we just say, well, we're Aussies. We learned how to do everything on the smell of an oily rag because we
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 did
just don't get
indeed. And
the
don't forget they're sitting on the capital that they've just saved in the red. So we
exactly.
deploy that into the blue, invest in growth. And once we've made that initial investment, then it pays for itself because we have measurable, predictable, scalable, repeatable revenue, and we can constantly keep reinvesting to keep driving that growth. And you know then that as you're driving that growth, you're not going to build out a heap of people onshore again, and it's going to cost you a fortune and be very high risk. We're going to be smart as we scale up again with these global resourcing and AI agents. So it's a very attractive, fast growth model that's self-funding, which is really exciting. But you've got to build it in-house and you've got to own your growth. I say that almost 3 times a day to founders that I meet. Do you own your growth? Really? Do you
Well,
have a predictable revenue model? Really?
and let's
They
face
always
it,
delegate it to somebody else. It should absolutely be the CEO's role to own the growth.
and then they
It's the
wonder
most
why they have a
important thing.
sleepless night.
Yeah. So, but that's what we do. We go in, co-manage it, go in, build it in-house so that you own it and then step away. And it should continue to run in that fashion to all the scorecards and metrics because, Nat, you're a no-fluff Aussie. At the end of the day, it's not about vanity metrics. If somebody says, oh, but we got lots of impressions, don't say that around Natalie.
Nope. That's lovely. Yes. How many
Turnover is
sales did we get
vanity,
from that?
profit is sanity. Yes, it's true.
How many
Exactly.
sales did we get from that, really? Yeah, so, no, yes, I might have been accused of being direct once or twice, and I make no, apologies for it.
Well, at the end of the day, we're about results. So
Yeah.
the numbers don't lie, and marketing is not a crystal ball. So that whole department, that whole blue and the org chart around that, whether it be agency or in-house 1 or 2 marketing people who are graphic designers sometimes, at the end of the day, that all needs to be revisited if you want to take advantage of what's coming. Because to us, that's the exciting part of the next 3 to 5 years is the amount of movement in the market, which is very scary, but the amount of movement. But to us, that's such a huge opportunity if you are strategic, smart, and agile.
Well, it can be either terrifying right now or it can be highly exciting because the opportunity is absolutely there, and it really is up to the brave to decide who is going to pick up the mantle and take some pretty courageous steps into what they're doing. Because sitting there and running your business as you have for the last 20, 30, 40, and we see businesses that are, in their 70 or 100th year, some of them over 100 years, it's not going to get you through the next 3 to 5 years. You are, as a leader, as a CEO, as a founder, you are going to have to lead and you are going to have to make some hard decisions. That's just the nature of the game. So the sooner that you reconcile that and figure out what those hard decisions need to be to suit your particular circumstance and get going on this process, the best you are going to fare. This is not one that you can sit on the fence and think about, I'll revisit that in 18 months. In 18 months' time,
We're
your lunch
moving
will be
weight.
cut if you have not already made some pretty big steps.
Which brings me to my other favorite saying, which we could change the words to Taylor Swift on. So maybe it's freak 'em in or freak 'em out. Hoo, hoo, hoo.
Well,
That's
we've
what it's
said that for a
about.
while. It is, yeah, and to a lot of people, it's going to be quite literally a white knuckle ride. But this just allows such a huge level of opportunity that we haven't really seen for decades, if not centuries. It's a case of, are you up for the challenge or not?
I say yes. And so do our clients. We've got some amazing CEOs and founders that we're working with at the moment that see this coming, that are early adopters to AI. They just don't know how to pull it together into a strategy, and they need help with the execution as well. I mean, it's one thing to get in a strategist and then they hand it over to you and say, good luck. That doesn't really work. You really want to partner with somebody who can not only come in and show you what the new growth strategies look like, the new org structures look like, but also stick around to help with the execution, to make sure that it's set up, that it's built, it's optimized, and then as it's scaling nicely, step away knowing that you own that and you're not dependent on that person. So really finding those key partners, those smart, again, we're being strategic and smart in the future. Those are really critical, and we're really loving partnering with clients on that journey. So in summary, we've got a lot of org chart changes coming the way of the founder. So, predictive index, that's what I'd like to end on, and the importance of profiling your people so that when you bring in these global talents, that it's a nice cultural fit, but also to see which ones are actually going to be okay in the face of AI and the change that is coming. So that's also a very important part when we're selecting and choosing and headhunting talent in the Philippines. That's a big component of what we do is, are they curious? Do they have a thirst for learning? Can they handle change? But I would say you need to do the same with your onshore team as well, because that will give you a fairly good indication as to which ones are going to freak out as we go through this process, as opposed to those that are going to freak in and take AI and take their global team and then really drive your business to the next level.
Yeah, for sure. Is that that's a whole other topic that we could talk on for hours, is personality profiling and where that's going to be and who's going to ease through that process with the least amount of, I guess, stress and headaches. And I mean, it also brings into so many other topics about the speed in which your own internal team can change, the speed in which the founder or the CEO sees the change needs to happen, and bridging that gap, because that's another huge thing. Because somehow through all of this, we've got to be able to do it in such a way that we don't blow the heads of our teams. And a lot of change can do that to people. I love your Christmas analogy about what happens at Christmas and all of that. And it's so true. Maybe you want to run through that one for us. But that is a whole other discussion, I think, that really merits some time and thinking. It's the culture of a CEO and how they go about embracing this change and the technology adaptation. It's how they manage the change through that. And that's the volume of change and the stress and uncertainty that that brings. And plus also then the individual personal profiles about people that adapt to change the easiest. So all of them make great pieces for a discussion, I think, around all of that.
Well, it feels like it's going to be January forever. So after Christmas, just to give you the analogy, and it's actually a fact, after Christmas, people go off the rails. It's the most depressed and lost that they are. And the reason being is because over Christmas, they've spent more than 10%, they've eaten more than 10%, they've spent more than 10% with their in-laws. And so that is their change barometer. They can only deal with 10%. AI is up there. It's way more than 10%. So how are we making sure that we're taking them on this journey and not just coming in and dumping global talent on them and dumping AI onto them? We really need to make sure that we're supporting the ones who obviously don't like a lot of change, which will be a majority of your workforce, and then making sure that they're coming on that journey with us and they know what's coming. So for us, it's very important that we're looking at what is the confidence we need to build in order to show them that this is actually a strategy that works for you as well. And it is. Nobody likes doing these low-level activities that our agents are doing, Natalie. They don't enjoy it. They're all complaining that they're working too much and they're burnt out. So why not give them resources and help, both as agents and offshorers, in order for them to achieve their KPIs and go beyond, and obviously get some time back. So to me, it's not just about the founder winning, the business surviving and thriving, but also our existing team being leveraged so that they can win.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it can be done. This sort of level of wholesale changes that are coming doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's all about how you approach it, and it's the careful planning and the mindset. And it has to be CEO led. So that in itself is uncomfortable for some CEOs. So straight up there, particularly the technology piece, it has to be CEO led.
That's our barometer, isn't it? If we meet somebody and they go, oh, yeah, I'm really focused on growth as a CEO, and then they go, but I can't come to the meeting, meet with my marketing manager, we're like, okay, no, we're not working with you.
No, we're not going to waste our time, quite frankly.
Yeah. Because it has to be something that the CEO, they have to own their
Values.
growth. Yep, they have
Good
to.
talk.
So
Good talk. Enjoyed it a
great.
lot.
Me too. If we haven't freaked everybody out, then if you're freaked in, love to have a chat about your business and hear about what you're doing to become an agile force, a business force to take market share in the future. And we hope that this conversation around I can't get that out today. Org chart.
Org chart shakeups.
Yes, org chart shakeups has been helpful. Think about it in red and blue. Think about AI agents, offshoring, global talent, and let's get prepared for what's coming. It's an exciting time.
And you know how much I love pulling apart problems and helping people figure out the way forward. So yeah, I'm more than happy to go and look under the hood in a few businesses and see how I can help shake them up
Well,
and
you've seen a
reshape
lot of
them.
businesses too. So
I
between the
do.
two of us, it's usually another example. It's not very often you have to start with a blank piece of paper. There's certainly some consistent things that we've seen that work that can make us hit the ground running. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you. Good talk. Catch you next time.
Till next time. Bye. Be
Bye.
agile.
Not fragile.